Hi everyone, this is Claire from your speech class. So today I'm going to be doing my presentation. So I'm going to embed this video into my PowerPoint so that you can go along on the PowerPoint with me, and I will just I'll say what exact slide we're on, or I'll tell you to click forward to the next slide. Okay, so I'll start on the title slide. Alright, so my topic is the importance of helium to society. So when you think of helium, you might think of chemistry, you might think of the periodic table, like gross, chemistry is really hard, so personally I don't like it, but what really struck me was this topic, and I hope that it sheds a little bit of light on this sort of thing for you guys. So yeah, let's get on to the first slide. Alright, so here's a little overview of this topic. Okay, so everyone might think, oh, helium, it's what's in balloons, it's what makes your voice high pitched when you breathe in helium. But really there are a lot of different uses for helium in your everyday life, but also in the science, research, and medical and aerospace industries. So yeah, it has a lot of important applications besides party balloons. What I'll kind of be touching on are some basic properties of helium and its background, the applications of helium in our everyday lives, but also in those other industries, and also why we need to save helium, because it's a very finite and scarce resource for certain reasons that we'll go into. Alright, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, the basics, all about helium. So, the element was first discovered in London, 1895, by Sir William Ramsay, but it was also discovered in Uppsala, Sweden, I believe that's how you pronounce it, by Niels Abraham. So it was kind of being independently discovered around the world. But helium was named after the Greek word for sun, which is helios, and that gave it its right meaning because it was first observed inside of the sun's corona, which is just basically the outer layer, outer atmosphere of the sun. So that's why it was named after the Greek word sun. The element, some properties that are probably really important are that it's in a gaseous phase at room temperature, low density, non-reactive, and also non-toxic, which those properties play such a crucial role in their applications. And then some just technical traits of helium. Its atomic number is 2. It's one of the noble gases, and it is a non-metal. So that's a little bit of background on helium before we get into how it's used. So next slide. Okay, this is how helium affects your everyday life. People may not realize it, but helium is used in a lot of day-to-day things that it may affect you directly or it may affect you indirectly. But one obvious application of helium is that it's put into party balloons. You ever go to a kid's birthday party, or you see those those big number balloons when you turn when you turn another age, but that's a really obvious use of helium. One other thing, if you like to scuba dive, or if you've gone on vacation and scuba dived, helium is combined in a mixture. It's usually 80% helium to 20% oxygen, and that creates kind of an artificial atmosphere at lower depths for divers. And that's really important because it prevents a condition called nitrogen narcosis, which is also called Cason's disease. So that's really important for scuba divers. And also a really cool application is the helium neon laser, which if you ever see a cashier at the store ringing up your items with that scanner, that is actually a helium neon laser. It's that scans your items. So that's one really cool application of the helium neon laser. But also, if you're one to still use CDs or DVDs, that's used as well to read the disc. It's called an optical disc. Those, the DVDs and CDs. So that's the helium neon laser is used to read the disc. Also, some other little applications of helium are it's used to detect leaks in air conditioners, and also it inflates the airbags in your car in the event of an impact. All right, so helium's importance in the scientific fields. So while those were smaller applications that affect everyday people, helium does have a lot of uses for like the medical and science research industries. So one important one, if you've ever had like a brain scan, helium is actually used in MRI machines, and that kind of serves to basically cool down the machine because it contains superconducting magnets that spins around, and that's how you get the image. But to cool that down, we use liquid helium. And also the Department of Energy uses liquid helium to operate its electron accelerator, and it's also used in other particle accelerators as well. Oh my god, excuse me. All right, and then in aerospace travel and engineering, helium pressurizes the fuel in high-speed rockets, so that's kind of cool in spacecrafts, and also to cool satellite equipment. And also for a fun fact, helium was actually used to cool down and stabilize the hydrogen and oxygen that was used on the Apollo spacecrafts when they were lifted off. All right, next slide. The big picture is that helium is very scarce. You can't contain it very easily, and it's very hard to work with due to the properties that we discussed before that make it useful. So there are certain trade-offs with that. Helium is the second most abundant element in the universe, but due to its difficult properties, it's hard to harness and contain. But it's usually mined in Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas. Those are the main places where it's extracted and mined for specific, being contained and whatnot. But it can be very difficult because once it is out of the Earth's rock and minerals and into the atmosphere, it can float all the way up into outer space and also within the atmosphere, so that it can't be extracted, because it's very, very difficult to extract helium from, the atmosphere, especially when it goes all the way into space. Then there's no getting that back. So it's a very difficult, medium to work with, and that's why it's so important to save. All right, next slide. Okay, so next slide is going to be, we all know about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It happens every year in New York City. It's very beautiful, seeing all the balloons, but it's also a giant waste. It's believed that approximately 300,000 cubic feet of helium is used to keep those balloons afloat every single year. So think about how hard it is to harness helium and then using it on this giant balloon. It's very difficult. So, a lot of scientific researchers and science experts, they say that it's kind of like an abusive and it's a big misuse of this very scarce element. So this is important to think about. you know, when you're admiring those balloons, think about, you know, how that helium could apply in a more important situation like MRI scans, and even like airbag and your airbag, you know, that saves your life. You know, there are more important applications to helium. All right, next slide. All right, to conclude, overall helium, we don't realize how important it is to our everyday life. It has very unique, valuable, and versatile properties that make it, you know, have so many applications. From barcode scanners to the airbags in cars, helium affects at least, it affects you in at least some part of your everyday life. In scientific industries, it's used for MRI scans and also in particle accelerators. It's mainly like a coolant. That's a lot to do with its scientific applications. And also, helium is very scarce and finite as a resource, so it's very important to conserve it the most that we can, and that involves not wasting it on less important applications. But that's all up to you. What do you think about this topic? You know, knowing this, like, what do you think? All right. And next slide. That's the end of my slideshow. If you have any questions, I guess you could comment them. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your week, guys. Thanks for listening.